In this tutorial video, we'll be discussing theme statements and how to write them. But to begin with, we need to have a conversation about what exactly makes up a theme, or in this case, what it's not. First of all, a theme is not one word. That's a topic. So if you use a theme like love, or the theme was love, you actually have not created a theme or a theme statement. A theme is also not a definition. So when you say love is when you have feelings for someone, you're not creating a theme statement, you're defining the topic and stating the obvious. A theme is also not specifically about one story or character, rather it should be universal. So for instance, if you say the Capulets and Montagues don't get along, you're being too specific to Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So what exactly is a theme? A theme is a message or main idea that the writer wants the reader to remember after reading his or her work. It's a thematic statement that you can write in a complete sentence or two that expresses a theme. You need to ask yourself whenever you read a piece of literature, why did the author write what you just read? What did he or she want to say about the given subject, life in general, or human nature? If you can determine the core values that the author is trying to impose on you by reading their work, then you can often come up with the theme. So for instance, a theme statement might look like something like this. If the topic is on love, you might say, unconditional love withstands any obstacle. If the topic is on hope, you could say hope can assist an individual in overcoming a dark period in their life. If the topic was courage, you might say it's important for individuals to have courage in order to express their individuality. You'll notice in all three examples that you've taken the topic word and expanded upon the what and the why. So instead of just saying the theme word, you have to explain why it matters. So how do you go about writing a theme statement? In creating a theme statement, the first requires identifying the different theme topics that can be found in the work. So for instance, you might say love, betrayal, power, or ambition. Next, think about how this topic is treated in the text. Is there a positive or negative impact in the treatment of the theme topic? So, if you're talking about ambition, too much ambition can be bad. Using a statement like that gives a direction, whether positive or negative, about the theme word. Finally, what's the result of this treatment? What outcome can be identified in either the positive or negative treatment of the theme's topic? So for instance, excessive ambition can lead to a character's downfall. If a character is too focused and too obsessed on their own goals, sometimes they miss the things going on around them. So a proper theme statement would be, excessive ambition can lead to a character's downfall. An easier way to come up with a theme statement might be to consider it as being something like a mathematical formula. For instance, if you consider it being the topic plus the treatment, whether that's positive or negative, equals the result, you should be able to generate a decent theme statement. So consider if you were asked to generate a theme on this particular prompt. If the topic said, discuss the ideas developed by the text creator in your chosen text about how individuals perceive themselves and the impact of this perception on others, what could you say? Well, there is a 5-step process you can go through in order to pull the topic apart before you even start to generate your theme statement. The first step is to break down exactly what the prompt is asking. Start by eliminating the extraneous details. The question prompt that will be standard for most diploma topics. So in this case, you'll see that we've crossed out the first 2 lines. And we're left with how individuals perceive themselves and the impact of this perception on others. That will be our topic. The second step is to underline the topic or theme words, and then define each separately, including looking up the synonyms and antonyms. So for instance here, you'll see we kind of have basically only two theme words to look at: perceive or perception, and impact. In this video, I'm not going to go through the process of looking up the words or defining them, but you should get in a regular process of doing that so that you clearly understand what the topic is about. The third step is to circle the conjunction. In this case, you'll see the conjunction is and, which means you need to talk about both the perception and the impact. If, for instance, the conjunction is or, that means you could talk about one or the other. In this case, you must talk about both. The fourth step is to box the action word. Here, you'll see that impact is our action word. We want to see how someone's perception impacts other people, whether that's their perception of the first person. That's something to be determined by your text. The final step is to create your theme statement formula. Remember, it's topic plus treatment, plus or minus, or positive or negative, equals the result based on the variable you have outlined. So now we've taken away all the question prompt, and we're just left with the key pieces you need. So how individuals perceive themselves and the impact of this perception on others. You might come to the conclusion that if an individual's perception is of them being self-important, they might lead people to feel alienated. So you see, my formula is perception plus self-importance equals alienation. So how exactly do you generate a theme statement from this? Well, here you take your formula, perception plus self-importance equals alienation, and you attempt to write it out in a statement. When an individual perceives that his or her needs are more important than another's, he or she often alienates those closest. So think about that in your own life. How many times have you put your needs over top of others and they've felt rejected, hurt, or needing to get away? Now you have a theme statement. But if you want to make a really strong theme statement, you need to give it a qualifier. You need to provide something you can actually argue about if you were writing an essay. So you'll see here we have the exact same statement as the last slide, but this time we've added the word painfully. When an individual perceives that his or her needs are more important than another's, he or she often alienates those closest the most painfully. In other words, we harm the people we are closest to when we focus on ourselves and not others. If you want to check to make sure that your theme statement works, you have to remember that third lesson, and that's that your theme statement, must be universal enough to apply to any and all texts. So if our theme statement is, when an individual perceives that his or her needs are more important than another's, he or she often alienates those closest the most painfully. So think of Disney's Toy Story. Is our theme statement universal? Well, let's check. In Toy Story, Woody the cowboy perceives that he is superior to Buzz Lightyear because of his understanding that he is merely a toy, and he attempts to prove that Buzz's belief that he is a real space commander is flawed. Woody alienates Buzz so much that when he needs his help to escape the bully's room, Buzz is so painfully deflated by the realization that he's a simple toy that he unfortunately gives up and will not try to fly and rescue them. So here, you can see that Woody's values, Woody's perceptions, have harmed Buzz's. To check another one, let's look at Despicable Me. In Despicable Me, Gru's desire to be known as the world's greatest villain by stealing the moon overshadows the orphans, Margot, Edith, and Agnes' need for a father. Gru ends up missing the dance recital because of his evil plans, and the girls, devastated, are taken back to live at the orphanage. So here you can see that our theme statement is universal enough to apply to multiple texts. So it's your turn to practice. Consider the following prompt and write your own theme statement.